Covering over 17 million square kilometers, the Russian Federation spans 11 time zones. It holds about the same surface area as the planet Pluto. Much of this territory consists of extreme environments. The taiga alone is a continuous, dense coniferous forest that stretches thousands of miles from the western borders all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Governing a continuous landmass of this size forces a unique set of priorities. The geography dictates how the state must organize itself to survive. This heat map of Eurasia shows a severe demographic imbalance. Roughly 75% of the population lives clustered in the urbanized European plain in the west, leaving the massive eastern territories largely empty. To secure this empty space, the state must maintain the world's longest land frontier, sharing borders with 14 sovereign nations. Moscow sits at the center of the western population cluster. The government operating here has to project authority outward across thousands of miles to keep the remote regions integrated. Looking west from Moscow, the East European plain is flat. There are no oceans, high mountain ranges, or deep canyons to slow down an advancing army. Without natural barriers to hide behind, Russian leaders historically relied on distance. Expanding the borders outward and securing a deep ring of satellite states became the standard military strategy to absorb invasions. By 1917, military defeats and severe food shortages fractured the Russian Empire. The Bolsheviks mobilized urban workers and soldiers to seize control of the government. Vladimir Lenin structured a new government. He built a highly centralized single-party apparatus capable of commanding the resources of the entire continent. Through a series of 5-year plans, the state mandated aggressive industrialization. The goal was to quickly extract the massive reserves of coal and iron locked away in the Urals and Siberia. Mechanizing the agricultural and industrial base required millions of laborers, many working under brutal, forced conditions, to build the heavy machinery the state demanded. In 1941, this rapidly built industrial machine collided with the invading German military. The Soviet defense weaponized their own geography. They traded vast tracts of flat land for time, stretching German supply lines until they froze in the severe winter weather. Surviving the war proved that combining raw territorial depth with a centralized industrial command could forge a global superpower. Having engineered a physical hold over the hostile Siberian landmass, the Soviet state directed its heavy industry upward. In 1957, they launched Sputnik 1. Placing an artificial satellite into orbit demonstrated the technological capacity to project power anywhere on the globe. 4 years later, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth. The willingness to absorb immense material costs to overcome the Siberian environment translated directly to mastering the strict physics of spaceflight. This line chart tracks the era of stagnation in the 1970s and 80s. Domestic economic output flattens out here, while military and administrative spending continues climbing. A rigid, continent-wide planned economy struggles to adapt to technological changes over time. To save the failing system, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced policies to restructure the economy and open public access to information. Easing the central grip over the population allowed long-suppressed nationalist movements to organize. Without the threat of military intervention, the satellite buffer states broke away. By the end of 1991, the Soviet republics declared independence and the Union dissolved. Boris Yeltsin assumed leadership of the government structures remaining in Moscow, taking control of the newly formed Russian Federation. The communist system collapsed, but the 17 million square kilometers of land and the massive administrative burden of securing it remained exactly the same. Today, the Russian Federation still relies on the Trans-Siberian Railway to bridge the crowded western cities with the distant eastern extraction sites. Beneath the permafrost sits roughly half of the world's coal reserves, alongside some of the largest deposits of natural gas and petroleum on the planet. Pulling these materials out of a freezing environment and moving them to international markets requires massive, continuous infrastructure investments. Controlling the pipelines gives Moscow a specific type of geopolitical leverage. When neighboring nations rely heavily on this energy supply, physical buffer states are replaced by economic dependencies. The country's influence on the modern global stage is built on its capacity to extract and export its own geology. The territory holds the deepest and most capacious freshwater reserve on Earth at Lake Baikal. It reaches up to isolated outposts locked in the ice above the Arctic Circle. Surviving in these environments demands a specific type of endurance. Political structures, economic models, and empires rise and fall. But the immense scale of the Russian landmass guarantees that the nation operating on it will continuously exert its gravity on human history.